So this talk really should have been given by Emma, but she has small children, so of course she's on vacation this week. Okay, using IBA data to evaluate methods for assessing biodiversity impact. So in Sweden we have a funding agency called MISTRA. It's the Swedish Foundation for Strategic Environmental Research. And it recently put a lot of funding into this problem. How can we make investment decisions biodiversity friendly? Because the economy is driving a lot of biodiversity loss. So turning that around, it would be fantastic. If we can reduce the negative biodiversity impact, maybe even find ways of making money streams go into nature positive outcomes. That's the buzzword. And this funding got divided up into two different projects. One of them is FinBio, and it stands for Finance to Revive Biodiversity. It's coordinated by Stockholm Resilience Center at Stockholm University, and my group is responsible for one component in this project, where we are, what we're focused on is how we can improve the reporting of biodiversity impact using eDNA, Earth observation, satellite data, and open data publishing. So trying to describe our vision, what we want to accomplish. So this is an attempt at illustrating how the system works today. So you have these financial institutions, they're pouring investments into companies. The companies have environmental impact, including biodiversity impact. But then financial institutions, of course, they hopefully are interested in funding companies with activities that have a minimal negative impact on biodiversity and other environmental variables. So how does that work? Well, the way it works currently is we have some legislation, the company reports some indirect variables, things like land use, emissions, etc. And then we try to steer the investments using that type of system. So the kind of future we envision is one where we try, well, first to empower the companies themselves to understand what they're doing with biodiversity, and then doing something about it themselves immediately when they see the data. So we want the companies to collect eDNA data, evaluate that data, and then optimize their practices instead of trying to follow some generic recommendations that are set up by publicly funded, through publicly funded research. So that's one part of it. So closing these local loops. And the other part of it is that we want to have transparency and trust in the system to avoid greenwashing by enforcing open data publishing. Everything should be open, and that makes it possible to get some trust in the data reported and that we're steering in the right direction. So in the project, we are exploring these ideas through case studies and through pilot projects. So for the case studies, surprise, we're using the data from the IBA project. So we have data from Sweden and we have data from Madagascar. And this represents, of course, an eDNA data set, environmental DNA data set. So this is, let's see, so this test tube here illustrates that. So in Sweden we have eDNA data from the IBA project. In Madagascar, we also have the eDNA data. For Sweden, we have a lot of traditional data. Experts have been, biologists and others, have been out in the environment collecting data actively. And then, of course, we have Earth observation data both for Sweden and for Madagascar. So how effective are these methods in measuring biodiversity and assessing biodiversity impact? In Sweden, this is the traditional biodiversity data we're using is primarily the data from the NILS project. You already heard about that. national inventories conducted with the aim to collect, analyze and present data on Swedish nature. Okay. So what we're focusing on now is comparing conventional methods, so the NILS data, and what we can get out of the eDNA data in terms of saying something about the organismal diversity in Sweden. Then we're comparing conventional NILS data with what we can get out of Earth observation data, so a little bit along the lines that Tobias talked about recently. And then we're focusing on habitat feature diversity in Sweden. And finally, we're comparing the information we can get out of eDNA data from the IBA project versus Earth observation data. And here we can look at the insect diversity, and here we can include both Sweden and Madagascar. One of the most interesting aspects here is, of course, is that the most the projects that have the most negative impact on biodiversity, they tend to happen in those types of countries like Madagascar, where it's very difficult to measure biodiversity or biodiversity impact. But eDNA methods allow us to do that. So that's one of the things we want to illustrate or highlight through this study. And finally, the pilot projects. We're working on 3 parallel pilots now. We're looking on biodiversity in fields with change management practices, so farming. So this is regenerative farming, essentially. And we're doing that with a project called Svensk kolinlagring. Then we're looking at biodiversity on lawns versus meadows. It's something very obvious you can do that has a positive effect on biodiversity, and can we document that with these eDNA methods? We're doing that together with Akademiska Hus in Lund, at Lund University. And finally, we're looking at biodiversity in tree plantations, with different types of tree plantations with a company or organization called Grovana. So this is from Lund University, right outside the Department of Biology in Lund. So this is the meadow where they don't mow the lawn, and this is a nearby site where they mow the lawn, and it's, you know, you see less diversity even in this picture, right? These photos. And then this is where we document the biodiversity impact of regenerative farming, and just some pictures from that. So this project, Svensk kolinlagring, now they're funding these activities through, so essentially, although it's not really a market yet, but it's this carbon credit thought that's sort of underlying this project. We think there's a win-win if we can document that they have a positive biodiversity impact through the regenerative farming. That can add an income stream that helps support these projects. Okay, that's it. Thanks.